Okay, it looks like we can go ahead and get started. So welcome, my name is Kevin Saracino. I'm a member of AmeriCorps. I'm currently serving with Chagrin River Watershed Partners. And CRWP, we're happy to be partnering with Cuyahoga Soil and Water Conservation District, as well as the city of Pepper Pike, to bring you this webinar. It's titled Your Backyard Stream, a Pepper Pike Owner's Manual. And today I'm joined with Jared Bartley from Cuyahoga Soil and Water Conservation District. He's a senior program manager. And I'm also joined with Pepper Pike Mayor, Richard Bain. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to the mayor who wants to do a quick welcome, and we can go ahead and get started.
Thanks, Kevin. Good evening, everyone, and welcome. Many residents of Pepper Pike are facing flooding and stream bank erosion challenges throughout the community. To help you address these issues on your property, the city of Pepper Pike is pleased to partner with Cuyahoga Soil and Water Conservation District and the Chagrin River Watershed Partners to provide you, the Pepper Pike residents, with this presentation, Your Backyard Stream, a Pepper Pike's Owner's Manual. This program will offer insights on legal aspects of stream ownership, a general introduction to stream science and management, and training on live stake installation and maintenance for stream bank stability, as well as habitat enhancement. As Kevin mentioned, as part of your registration for this program, you will receive small live trees for your own installation. Pickup of the trees again will be on Thursday, April 29th from 6:30 to 7:30 in the City Hall parking lot. If you can't make it that evening, and we'll try to get some signage as you enter the parking lot so you'll know where you're going back there. If you can't make it that evening, which I hope you will, it'll be easier that way because Kevin and or Jared will be on hand to answer any questions you may still have regarding planting these live stakes. You can pick up the trees the next day from the service department. Because the service department is under construction with its renovation, you should go over to where the building department is, where Kyle Preto, our service department administrator assistant, is sitting. So just go into the building department and she'll be able to hook you up with your trees. Thank you for your time. And I now turn the program over to Jared Bartley from the Cuyahoga Soil and Water Conservation District. Jared?
Thanks, Mayor, and thanks, Kevin. Happy to be here tonight with everybody. We'll go ahead and get started. Just make sure somebody hollers if for some reason we get off and you don't see the presentation, or it's hard for me to tell if everybody's actually seeing it. So if something happens and you're not seeing the presentation, or it seems like the slide I'm talking about is not the one that we're looking at, just speak up and give me a holler and let me know so you know what's going on there. So as Kevin the Mayor mentioned, my name is Jared Bartley. I'm the Senior Program Manager for Education Watersheds at Cuyahoga Soil and Water Conservation District. Just before we get started, a little housekeeping. The presentation and the live stake program is financed from a grant through the Ohio Environmental Protection Agency and US EPA. Basically, but that should not, you should not infer their endorsement or of what we're saying, the recommendations we're giving or anything like that. This is basically their disclaimer to say, we funded it, but don't complain to us if you don't like it. So who we are, Cuyahoga Soil and Water Conservation District, we're one of that like to say we're like one of the original environmental organizations in Cuyahoga County. We were founded in 1949. Our office is in the Asiatown area of Cleveland on Perkins Avenue. And our mission is pretty straightforward. We implement programs and practices that protect and restore healthy soil and water resources. Through this, we work with almost every community in Cuyahoga County, either directly or indirectly in some way, and also a lot of the partner organizations, watershed groups, such as Chagrin River Watershed Partners, and many of the other watershed groups throughout the county. So what we're basically an overview of what we're going to be discussing tonight. Give an introduction to your stream. So this is kind of basics like stream science, why your stream is the way it is, those kinds of things. We'll talk about your rights and responsibilities as a stream owner, and then some common problems we see with streams and some of those solutions. Before we get started though, I do have a couple of polls here we're going to do. We have a total of 5 polls tonight. We're going to do 2 right now and 3 later. Just to kind of get an idea of who's out there and what we're doing, the kind get a sense, make sure we're covering things of interest to people here. So the first poll, which I'm launching now, is do you have a stream on your property? So go ahead and vote. Our answers are yes, no, and no, but a friend or family member does. So once we get everybody voted, we'll be able to share those results, and we'll see where we are. So we have about 30% of people voted so far. We'll give it another 20 or 30 seconds here. Get people used to going through the voting process on this. And excellent, we're getting closer to everybody having voted. All right, so I'll give it a couple more seconds, and then we'll go ahead and close the poll. About 86% of people voted so far. I'm gonna share the results. So 92% of the people participating tonight do have a stream on their property. 1% does not, and another 7% do not, but have a friend or family member that does. So excellent. So we're hitting our target audience with this. The next one, before we move on, is if you have a stream on your property, what issues, basically what stream issues have you experienced? So, and check all that apply. So there's stream bank erosion. It says it's distributing the poll, so I don't know. There we go. Collecting responses. So stream bank erosion, log and debris jams, flooding, other. So if you have other, if there's something there that we didn't mention that you have an issue with, please type what that might be in the chat so we get a sense of that. We always like to see what some of these other problems related to streams people are dealing with are. And then finally, none. If you're one of the, I'd say lucky, or maybe this has been because of something you've done proactively, but where you don't have any stream issues that you're dealing with on your property. So we'll give this another 5 or 10 seconds here and see where we come out on this one. So these are the most common stream issues that we receive calls about. We do site visits for landowners in Cuyahoga County related to natural resources issues. And I'd say related to streams, these are the ones we get by far the most. So going to go ahead and close the poll and share those results. So nothing unexpected here. 78% have stream bank erosion issues, another 60% with debris jams of some sort, almost half flooding issues. Some others, will be interesting to see what those are if anybody types those in, and then 13% no issues. So happy to have you here too. You can learn kind of maybe some things to do proactively to maintain, keep having no issues. All right, so now we'll move along. So streams have 4 main functions in the landscape, or in the watershed landscape. And what I just want to, while we're talking about here, just want to come out. So when I say watershed, just so we're all on the same page, watershed is the area of land that when it rains, all that water drains to the same place. So the Chagrin River watershed is the area of land that when it rains, all that water eventually drains to the Chagrin River. The Lake Erie watershed, similar. And their watersheds are really kind of like, if you think about those Russian nesting dolls, they can be really small. So as small as the area of land that drains to maybe a yard drain in your backyard, or a storm drain in front of your house, all the way up to the Atlantic Ocean or the Pacific Ocean watershed. So they're really within that scale, and they're within each other. So the Chagrin River watershed is within the Lake Erie watershed, is within the Atlantic Ocean watershed, just so that they are contained within each other. But they're a really effective way for us to think about rivers and streams, and how it's really the watershed area that drains them is really important in determining kind of the shape and size of the stream. We'll get into that in a bit. But the 4 main functions of the stream in that watershed landscape are to transport water. I think that's pretty obvious to most people. So transport water through the landscape, transport sediment and debris through the watershed, provide habitat for not just fish and things that live in the water, but also those stream corridors are important for mammals and birds as well, with the water, hopefully the trees next to them, those kinds of things, and also for nutrient cycling. So thinking nitrogen, phosphorus, and carbon, especially cycling those nutrients and processing those within the environment. We'll go over some basic stream terminology just so we all know what we're talking about, the same things when we're talking about our streams. So a riffle is kind of the shallower portion of the stream channel. It usually has the larger cobbles and boulders, and the stream flow is more turbulent. So it looks like if you think of a rapids or something like that, on a larger stream, it'll look like that. On a smaller stream that's maybe in your backyard, that's maybe only a couple feet across, it might just be a spot where you get a couple ripples and the stream's flowing a little faster and tends to be a little shallower. Kind of in contrast to that is the pool, which is the deeper portion of the stream channel. It usually has smaller pieces, all things being equal, has the smaller substrates, so smaller rocks at the bottom, such as sand, silt, mud, could be mucky even if it's a really slow flowing stream. And it will be deeper on average. Like I said, all things being equal, it will be deeper than the riffle, and also wider in a normal stream system we'd see in this part of the state. When we talk about a bar, we think of like a point bar on the bend in the stream. It's an area where there's lower velocity when the stream, even when the stream is flowing higher. So when the stream is maybe flooding or not quite flooding, but we've had a storm and the water level is up in the stream channel, this is the area of the stream channel during those higher flow conditions when there is lower velocity. And so when we talk about velocity in stream channels, moving water is energy. So if it's not moving as fast, there's not as much energy, it can't carry those pieces of sediment. So that's where they drop out during a storm, is on that meander bend. In a stable stream where we haven't had a lot of down cutting and eroding of the stream bed, the top of these point bars will be almost about the same level as the neighboring floodplain. Almost, not always, but pretty close. And you'll see in other stream systems where we've had some erosion, especially that down cutting or downward erosion of the stream channel, you really get a disconnect then between the top of that point bar and the neighboring floodplain. And well, since we're mentioning floodplains, it's generally flat or flat-ish area next to the stream channel where water is stored during a flood. We've really come to learn that floodplains and healthy floodplains that the stream can access during a storm are super important for both stream channel stability, so not having erosion, and also the overall health of the stream. So obviously they store floodwaters during a storm, but also it's a place for that energy. I've mentioned that moving water is energy. It's a place where the stream can dissipate energy so that you're not maybe having as severe of erosion, not passing that energy downstream. So floodplains are really a functioning floodplain. And we mentioned functioning, it's one that the stream can access during, without it being, 100-year storm or something like that. It can access on a regular basis, probably in a really healthy stream channel, at least once every year to year and a half on average, where it would spread out onto the floodplain. This is kind of a diagram, what I talk about. Healthy streams have riffles and pools and are connected to their floodplains. So you see just kind of the actual kind of overhead view. In this part of the world, streams tend to meander, so have kind of a curved pattern to them as they move across the landscape, unless they're a lot in a steeper valley, in which case they might be straighter. But for the most part, this area, there's at least some meander to the streams and that's a lot of times determined by a combination of factors, most notably the slope of the stream channel, but the substrate can have an effect on that as well. So kind of been talking about this, but there are many things that contribute to a stream's stream channel size, shape, and stability. So, the average and peak water discharge. So that's related to both the drainage area. So is that have a large area draining to it or a small area? And what's the landscape like in that watershed? Is it mostly forested? Is it mostly agriculture, or is it mostly, developed, especially commercial industrial developments that have a lot of hard surfaces, or what we call impervious surfaces, that don't allow the water to infiltrate into the ground? That can have a large impact on the timing of how the water moves through the system. I mentioned the slope of the valley and the stream channel affects the sinuosity and also how fast the water moves through there. If you have what type of bedrock is there, so supply and type of sediment and debris, so basically it affects the roughness of the channel. So if you have a lot of debris or kind of branches sticking out, or also larger rocks like boulders and things like that, the channel is considered rougher, and that helps slow down the water velocity. So you might get less erosion then. And then other physical constraints, is the stream eroded down to the bedrock? Is it up against the side of the valley? Trees we mentioned. Then also some man-made issues too, not issues, but man-made constraints, like bridges, culverts, dams, retaining walls, things like that. These all impact kind of the we call the geomorphology of the river, basically the size, shape, and stability of the river channel, stream channel. And usually when we're talking about this, I like to use stream as a general term for river, creek, run, creek, whatever you want to call it. I use stream as a very general term to try to encompass all of those. So we mentioned, the impacts of urbanization, all those hard or impervious surfaces on the stream channel. In natural landscapes, the trees, brush, meadows will tend to soak in more of the rain and not have as much runoff. Whereas in more developed lands, you get a lot more water flowing into the stream channel instead of soaking into the soil. And this is a very busy slide. You don't need to read all of these different things. So basically the point is, you got the bigger arrows on the left where it's more developed, and the smaller arrows on the right where it's more forested. And basically the idea is you get more water delivered to the stream system faster under developed conditions than you would under more, what we'll call natural conditions. So one way to illustrate this is, if you're like me, I like to go hiking in the woods. And if you hike in the woods very often, like me, there'll be times when you'll be out for a hike and it starts to rain. So if you're hiking in the woods, it starts to rain, you don't really get wet right away. The leaves and the trees intercept that rainfall. It rains more and more, and it gradually starts working its way down through the different layers of the forest, the canopy and the understory. Eventually that rain gets to the forest floor, that duff layer of leaves and things like that on the forest floor, and soaks in and slowly soaks into the soil. It rains more and more, and you'll finally get some runoff, which will make its way to the stream channel. But most of that water is getting in the stream channel slowly through shallow groundwater. And that stream will slowly rise, spread out onto its floodplain if you get big enough for the storm, slowly recede. By contrast, if you've ever been in the parking lot at Home Depot or Giant Eagle or something like that, when it starts to rain, you're getting wet right away, not just rained on, but you're sloshing through it ankle deep. All that water doesn't get soaked in anywhere. It goes to the nearest storm drain, where it's carried either, if it's more recent, say in the last 15 to 20 years development, hopefully goes to a stormwater control measure like a detention basin or retention pond, where it can hold that before releasing the stream channel. But if it's much older than that, chances are that's just being directed, that water's being collected by the storm drain into the storm sewer system and being directed straight to the nearest creek or river. And this is really, this is what it's designed to do. Like back in the the last half of the 20th century, 50s, 60s, 70s, when a lot of Northeast Ohio was being developed, that was the the epitome of municipal engineering, was to get that water off the landscape as quickly as possible. And we got to be very good at it. but now we're kind of dealing with the consequences of being so good at that, how that's affecting our stream systems. And just to illustrate that a little bit, we do a lot of rain barrel workshops and things like that where people can get rain barrels for the houses, and people always want to know, well, how much rain does it take to fill up a rain barrel? Obviously, that depends on the size of the area where it's raining, it's collecting that rainfall. But so 1,000 square foot surface, which is for purposes of visualizing, it's roughly a 25 foot by 40 foot area. A tenth of an inch of rain will generate 60 gallons of runoff. So that's enough to fill a rain barrel. But think about that then, if thinking about that parking lot at Giant Eagle or Home Depot, and think about getting, a half an inch rain, we're talking hundreds of thousands, millions of gallons of runoff. That's not necessarily being stored anywhere if there's not a stormwater control measure, a detention basin or something downstream. That's getting just flushed straight into the stream channel. And that it's not just from that parking lot, it's from all the other parking lots too. And that's where we start to really see these issues with erosion in the stream channel. Another thing that's leading to this is we have been noticing changing precipitation patterns over the last couple of decades, and that obviously affects stream discharge. So basically, I do a lot of work, or previously did a lot of work on the Rocky River or on the west side of the county. And we have a stream gauge there. It's been in operation since 1923. And I'll go through all this, but like long and the short of it is 6 largest discharges in the almost 100-year history of this gauge. Obviously, I did this a couple years ago, so it's 93 years of record, but have happened since 2010. And there's another one there in 2015. If I would update this, that have that too. So we're getting basically more rain falling on these impervious surfaces and generating higher flows in the stream channels too. So you're not crazy if you think like, oh, we keep getting all these huge storms, or we had 400-year storms in the last 10 years. Every year having what they call a 100-year storm, which basically just means there's a 1% chance of it happening every year. But I think our scales we use to measure those are now skewed or not accurate based on these changing precipitation patterns. So that's also kind of fighting against it. So if you own a property with a stream on it, these are all things kind of potentially working against you as far as not having erosion or flooding or anything like that. So, and just to illustrate this, I mentioned the, if you get a lot of that energy in the stream channel, instead of on the floodplain, you get down cutting. So that's the downward erosion of the stream channel. And you can see in the picture there, you see the top of what would be the bar or point bar on that stream channel. It's a little smaller in this picture. And you can see Elizabeth, my coworker, in there for scale. She's about a little over 5 feet tall, maybe 5.5. So you can see that it's really about a 4-foot disconnect there on the stream channel, which is, and now the stream really doesn't ever access and spread out over that floodplain that's up there a little higher. So all the energy gets, instead of dissipating on the floodplain, is being concentrated into the stream channel, where you just get more and more erosion. It's kind of like a vicious cycle of more erosion makes it harder for the stream to get on the floodplain, and so you get more energy concentrated in the channel, so you get more erosion. So, and eventually the stream will work its way to some form of equilibrium. It'll get down to a certain level where it just can't, either because the bedrock is too hard, or culverts on either end that keep it really from down cutting anymore, or some other grade control. It'll reach some sort of equilibrium, but once it hits that bedrock, the lower part it starts to really get a lot more of that channel erosion and spread out. So it'll reach that equilibrium, that bottom, that stage 5 there on the bottom. But you can see it's widened out and made a wider valley. So it's done a significant amount of lateral or side-to-side stream bank erosion to get to that point from the original channel size. So that's kind of some basic stream science, and we'll talk about some solutions or things we can do to try to address some of those issues. Before we get into that, I want to get into some of the legal issues or rights and responsibilities of stream ownership. Before I do that, I want to preface, I'm not a lawyer. I don't play one on TV, but this is just kind of our interpretation, how it's been explained to us as far as rules and regulations in the state of Ohio, and then we'll talk a little bit about some Pepper Pike specific ordinances that are in place. So we are going to do another poll here. I'm gonna launch this now, and it's the question there. So if there is a stream on your property, do you own the water? And this is just a yes or no. So let us know what you think here once we get that sorted out. You can see in that picture that's one of the issues, like a debris jam or a log jam there. We'll talk about that later on, how and when we might want to remove those. So we'll give everybody a chance to vote here. I'll take this as a chance to get a drink of water. We're about at half the people who voted so far. All right. So we're at about 80% of people voted. Give it another 3 or 4 seconds here. All right, gonna close the poll and share the results. So 15% of people said yes, and 85% said no. So, and the answer survey says no. So water is technically part of the public trust. A lot of Ohio water and drainage law goes back to British common law, actually, as a source of how we deal with a lot of this stuff from like the 1600s. So it's not the most up-to-date of our legal, not the most up-to-date features of our legal system, I guess. But so, and one way to think about that is you do own the land, though. You own the land under the water. So the stream bed you own. If you own both sides of that stream channel, you own the land on either side. The water flowing through it itself is part of the public trust. So one way we can illustrate that is, I think technically, someone could float through your property on a canoe, and as long as they're on the water and not touching the ground or anything, they're not technically, on your property. Now, I don't know. My guess is you would probably still get some trespassing, but they're not technically touching your property. Now, as soon as they step a foot out of that canoe, or their canoe hits a rock or a branch or something, then they're, on your property for sure. So that's just one way to think about that to illustrate that. We're going to do another poll here. If the stream's on your property, can you use the water? And we have another extra choice here this time. So the options are yes, no, or it depends. So we'll give people a chance to get voted on this one here. After this, we'll have one more poll, and then we're done with polls for tonight. But hopefully it gives you a chance to break it up a little bit and participate a little bit more, so it's not just me talking at you the whole time. So we're up to about 70% voted here. Gonna give it maybe 6 or 7 more seconds. All right, it's like we're leveling out, so I'm gonna go ahead and close that and share the results. So 31% said yes, 15% said no, and 54% said it depends. And the answer is yes. But it depends is kind of right too. So if you have a stream on your property, you have what are called riparian rights. So riparian basically means stream side or of the stream. So you are allowed to use water from the stream. You can pump water out to water or irrigate. You can divert the flow. Now, so it depends on the level of the diversion. You might need a permit from Ohio EPA or something, or the Army Corps of Engineers if you're like changing the entire course of the stream channel. But if you're just diverting some flow to use, I think a lot of times in these cases, it's thinking more agricultural area to provide water for livestock or something like that. But you can pump water out of there. But it also gets into it depends. So at a certain point, and it depends. It depends again on what the stream is and how it's designated. But you can pump water out until you're getting up to like 100,000 gallons-ish a day. At that point, you need to get a withdrawal permit from the state, from OD and Ohio Department of Natural Resources. But you can't take all the water because your downstream neighbors also have a right to the water in that stream. So this is another part where it gets into that kind of common law. There's not, unless there's a local ordinance in place that supersedes this, basically you're allowed to even do things to the stream that cause harm to your downstream or upstream neighbors. It just can't be unreasonable harm. And so it's a very slippery slope there. It's hard to pinpoint what is unreasonable harm, and that actually needs to be determined by the courts on a case-by-case basis. So basically, if you do something and your neighbor says what they're doing to the stream is harming me or causing my property harm or my person harm, they would have to basically take you to court and have that decided in a court of law if that was an unreasonable harm or not, which is a little wonky. But final poll question for tonight is going to be, if there is a stream on your property, who is responsible for maintenance of that stream channel? So are you responsible? Is a local government entity such as a city, county, or other responsible, or all of the above responsible, or none of the above responsible? You can check all that apply if you want, although I guess wouldn't necessarily be picking more than one. We'll give people another little bit to vote here. Hope you're not getting too tired of the polls. That's the last one for tonight, so I appreciate your input to see where people are coming from on this. All right, so we'll give it about 5 more seconds here. Try to give everybody a chance to vote. And go ahead and close it. And share those results. So 19% said the property owner is responsible. 7% said a local government entity such as the city or county is responsible. I have the mayor squirming a little bit there on that one. 71% said all of the above, and 5% said none of the above. So this is another one of those kind of it depends situations. I'm going to go ahead and hide the poll there. Get back. Generally, you are the one who is responsible for doing any maintenance on your stream channel. There are some instances where the city or county might do some work if say it's an erosion issue and it's threatening public infrastructure. They might come, such as a sewer line, a bridge or road, something like that. They might come in and make some repairs, do some maintenance to ensure that that public infrastructure is maintained or is not damaged. And then the other kind of entity here is in Northeast Ohio. We have in Cuyahoga County area, we have the Northeast Ohio Regional Sewer District. And if you are in their service area and your stream is draining a certain area, like I think it's 300 acres or greater, your stream channel is on your property is draining, they will come out and evaluate and potentially provide maintenance to that stream channel as well if you are one of their ratepayers, if you're in that sewer district service area. So a lot of places don't have something like that. We are fortunate to have them here. This is through their Stormwater Program. We're all paying into it when we pay our stormwater fee with our sewer bill. So that's one of the services that comes out of that. And we'll talk a little bit about their program later when we talk about flooding. So usually, though, if you have a problem, generally speaking, that you want addressed on your property, you are generally responsible for it, be that debris jam or stream bank erosion. However, do you have to clear debris or address erosion problems? So you could have stream bank erosion if it's not bothering anything. You really don't need to do anything about it. If it's not bothering you, you can just let it keep going. Same thing with if you have a debris jam or a log jam on your property, backing up and causing stream channel flood, but it's not affecting your property. You don't have to clear that out. Your neighbors might start complaining, be like, hey, this is blocked up and it's flooding my driveway or something like that. And that could be something like we talked about before, where are you causing unreasonable harm to them or something, it's always, I think, good to be neighborly. But now there are some communities, and I don't believe Pepper Pike is one, in Northeast Ohio that have ordinances that say that you must maintain the stream on your property clear and free flowing, in which case they could come out and say, hey, you got this debris jam, you need to get that out of there. But it usually doesn't have anything to do with, erosion or any kind of maintenance related to erosion. So that's kind of our legal, your rights and responsibilities as a stream owner. We're going to address some common stream problems and potential solutions next. So these are, as I mentioned before, these are the kind of the biggest problems that we get called out for when people have issues that we get called about, stream bank erosion being number one, followed by debris and log jams and flooding. So just an illustration of a stream that maybe needs some help, and this is like not super severe necessarily, but it is enough where it is an issue, where you do have the bank sloughing and falling down into the stream bed. Here we have a bad example of what not to do next to stream channel with the lawn mowed up to the edge. Turf grass has typically shallow root systems, whereas trees or forest, or also even kind of a meadow, you think of native plants or prairie grasses, longer, taller grasses have a deeper, thicker root system that can help hold the stream bank in place a little better. We'll talk about why it's bad to dump yard waste next to the stream and some of these hard armoring options too, and to see how steep this stream bank angle is here. And usually that hard armoring does not work out. It might last for a few years. We'll talk about that in a minute on one of the other slides, but it's usually not recommended, at least not to just dump like concrete slabs over the edge or something like that. So just some illustrations of stream bank erosion. The one in the upper left-hand picture here, this is probably only drained in a couple square miles at that point. That's Chippewa Creek and Broadview Heights. You can see it's major down cutting and erosion, losing giant trees. It's about 7 or 8 feet disconnected the stream channel from the floodplain. We see a lot of these too. The upper right-hand corner of this one, where it's just a small little stream in somebody's front yard, again mowed up to the edge, and it's just getting a lot of slumping and that erosion starting to occur. And this is kind of something in between. You got maybe 2 or 3 feet of down cutting erosion, obviously some lateral erosion. That pipe wasn't originally sticking out that far, that drain pipe. So and we get a lot of calls where people will say something along the lines of, you know, when I moved in 20 years ago, you know, I could just hop across the stream channels like a foot across, and now it's 10 feet across and 10 feet down. I got the Grand Canyon in my backyard, you know, so we get a lot of those calls too. I'd say if you have one of those small streams and you start to see issues, call us before it gets to be 10 feet deep and 10 feet wide, and it's a lot easier to fix the problem at the beginning than after it's been going for a while. So some common solutions are to leave a vegetated buffer. So streamside, best we say vegetated, we think forested streamside buffers are the best way to go. They the roots from that woody vegetation really help hold the stream bank together, and they provide other habitat benefits, shade and things like that, that really help the stream quality and the stream inhabitants as well. One thing we like to say about a vegetated buffer is it both protects you from the stream channel, partially because you're leaving some room for it to do some work and you have the woody roots there to protect you, but also protects the stream channel from you. So from anything you might be doing that could negatively impact the stream channel, you know, fertilizer or something, it gives it a chance to filter all that out before it gets to the stream. So, and you know, something I didn't bring up when we were talking about the legal aspects, but you know, Pepper Pike does have a riparian setback ordinance, and in the handouts, there's a map showing the riparian setback areas within Pepper Pike. And generally for most of those stream channels within Pepper Pike, it's going to be either 25, mostly 25 foot, but potentially a 75 foot setback. And that's mostly applied to new development, but really if you have that stream channel and it's forested now, you know, there's things you can do within that. You can definitely walk and use that part of your property, have trails, things like that. But I believe the ordinance does preclude like major clearing to say like, oh, I want to have this more be a grass area instead of a forest area next to my stream. And so in those cases, it's really just set that 25 foot or 75 foot is dependent on the stream, the drainage to the stream, the drainage area of the stream at that point, with the larger drainage area having the larger setback. So I encourage you to look at that map And there's some other downloads there in the handouts, as Kevin mentioned, that talk about some of the legal issues with stream ownership and Ohio drainage law, and also some information about being a good stream steward, and also live stakes, which we'll talk about in a minute. But for instance, if you had a stream channel like this is running through a homeowners association property, it really makes sense to keep, like, there's no reason to mow this slope going down to the stream channel. Like, it doesn't necessarily have to be like, oh, we need exactly a 25-foot setback here or a 15-foot vegetated buffer. Really, what makes sense? And I think in this situation, it makes sense to even just stop mowing. It doesn't have to be necessarily planting trees to start with, but just stop mowing in that area next to the stream channel can have a lot of benefits for it. And that's less work for people as well. And you can obviously seed that too with more flowers, wildflowers, things like that, as you see here in this example. You have more of these zones where you maybe have some trees, but then you also have more of a grassy or wildflower area next to the stream channel. And this is just to be in there. It doesn't always have to be trees. Some people like to maintain that view going out to the creek. So maybe something of a prairie or wildflowers might be more appropriate in those situations. And while not as well, those roots aren't as strong and maybe as tree roots or shrub roots, these prairie grasses and flowers are very deep rooting, sometimes 5, 6 or more feet. And also it's very thick roots. So they do have a benefit over just turf grass. Also, don't dump in your stream channel or vegetated buffer. Actually, you know, just to get a picture of this guy dumping, we were out doing a stream survey a few years ago, dumping his grass clippings over the edge. And so, especially in smaller stream channels, that can really affect the health of the stream as those grass clippings or leaves decompose. They use up a lot of oxygen in the water, and it can even lead to fish kills or things like that. Also in these smaller systems especially, they can eventually clog culverts and lead to, you know, cause backups that way. But one thing people often don't think of is, you know, all this dumping these grass clippings, these leaf debris, especially over time. You'll kill the vegetation off that's trying to grow on that stream bank, and which would benefit the stream bank by making the channel be rougher, so slowing down velocities a little bit, and also those root systems holding the bank in place. So you lose all those benefits that you might have from that by killing them, by smothering them basically with the grass clippings or the leaves that you might have raked up. Live stakes, this obviously is something we're talking about, and this is something that people will be receiving next week if you signed up for that part of the program. They're basically branches, short pieces of tree branch or shrub branch of species that will root from those cut pieces. So typically the kinds of species that are used for these, and I think the ones that we'll have for the distribution are, I think, willows, variety of willows, black willows, dwarf willows, pussy willows, but also then trees like sycamore, shrubs like buttonbush, and a lot of the dogwoods, red osier dogwood, silky dogwood, some of those, even elderberry, all root from those cuttings. And the benefit is, so you get the rooting, so you get the roots growing right into the stream bank and helping to hold that in place, but also the branches grow, so you can see on the right there. As those branches grow, they again make the stream channel a little more rough, and that helps slow down the water right by the stream bank, so they won't have as significant erosion because you have less energy working on the stream bank. Just some other illustration of these in work. I think this is actually on the Chagrin River, and you can see we want these mostly planted like right at the stream bank. Right along the edge of the stream, basically as low, as close to the water's edge as you can get them. That's where they're going to be most effective, and they need that water. They need to be down into the water table to root and to grow and to thrive. So you're going to go back to this with the live stakes. So just want to talk about this a little more. So how we'd plant those when you get these. The ones we're getting are 2 feet long, and you'd want to get them at least 1/2 to 2/3, so a foot to 16 inches into the ground. So depending on how the soil is where you are next to streams, a lot of times you can just push them in. It's not really a big deal. If the ground is harder or you have some rocky areas, you might have to put in some pilot holes, and we often use rebar for that. The other thing you could do though is you could just take one of the thicker live stakes that you get and use that to make your pilot holes. Just use a hammer on the end of it to pound it into the ground, and kind of you're using one of those, and that one might not end up surviving, but you could use it to make the pilot holes for the other if you don't have rebar or something like that handy. And when we pass out the live stakes, we can talk a little bit more and maybe do a little demonstration on how to install those. Also, we'll be putting a video together. We didn't get the shipment yet, so I haven't been able to make the video for this, but we'll be making a video on how to do the installation. So if we get the shipment a day before or so of the actual distribution, I'll try to get something together that we can send out to everybody. So live machines are another solution. So the live stakes, live machines are all considered bioengineering because it's basically using living things or vegetative matter to provide kind of these low-level engineering solutions to stopping stream bank erosion. They're bundles. We leave them bundled, and they're longer. They're 4, 6, 7 feet long. And we would dig a trench along the stream channel and put them in, and they would root from that and sprout from that. And they provide a little extra protection because then they're bundled up there all together as well. There are some situations where that's better to do, but not always, and it takes a little more work and a little more training to be able to do that correctly. This is an example where we are using both live stakes and live machines in this installation. And the stakes are actually used, so the machines are right along the water's edge there, and a lot of the stakes, so they're anchored in with live stakes. And then we have live stakes kind of going up the bank there as well. And they did some other seeding here too, and that's what the mat you see there is to kind of hold the seed down in place. When you're doing the live stake installation, you want to space those probably with what we're doing about 3 feet apart, maybe 2 to 3 feet. Depending on how much space you have where you're trying to put those in. And you could do a row or two of those too. It wouldn't just have to be just one line. It could be 2 lines, 2 rows along the stream channel, just depending on how much space you have where you're trying to do the project. Another installation is sometimes used on larger projects after they've if they've been able to modify the stream bank angle, like excavate some of the soil to make a gentler angle instead of a straight up and down stream bank due to erosion. It's called brush mattresses, and this is basically it's the same species we've been talking about, but they're longer, branchier pieces that you lay along the stream bed there with the cut end down into the water, so it can access the water or really close to the water's edge. And they're actually tied down with twine and stakes, and then backfilled with soil. So the picture here on the bottom, you would actually put some more soil on top of that in order to try to, you'd want those, then they would root from that. So they'd be watered down pretty good. They'd actually root from that, but the advantage of then providing this kind of cover on the bank and protection while they're being established, while the roots are developing. This is usually done on larger projects. They did one of these in Cuyahoga Valley National Park on the Cuyahoga River a few years ago. So another thing we can do, so you see this is one of these classic kind of vertical stream banks here. You got pieces slumping off and falling into the channel. If you have space and either the equipment or the money to pay somebody to do it, you actually grade that back. So you get more of what we call a bankful bench. So you're creating a floodplain. So you're creating a much shallower, gentler angle instead of the steep 90-degree angle we find a lot of times in eroding stream banks. And then over time, you could create a bank. So this is basically bringing the floodplain back down, or at least a small piece of the floodplain back down to the level of the stream channel, so it can provide some access to get some relief and dissipate some of that energy during storms. Obviously, you would seed this. In this particular project, we came back later and planted a lot of trees and shrubs also along this as well, to get those added benefits and some added stability from having those trees and shrubs, from those root systems in place. So that's stream bank erosion. Another issue we have sometimes get called out for are debris or log jams. So basically, the problems with debris or log jams is they can potentially cause upstream flooding, which could lead to property damage. It could also cause the stream channel to divert, which could lead to property damage from erosion as it creates almost as it flows around, tries to flow around the obstacle. You could get, this could also be logs, what we typically think of, but it could just be sediment buildup at bridges and culverts, especially smaller culverts. And I just will point out, like, dredging out the stream channel is almost never necessary, is always damaging to aquatic habitat, and is usually a temporary solution at best. We almost never recommend, like, just going out. A lot of times people will be like, say, oh, I'll just rent a bobcat and dig out the channel a little bit more. And that just usually causes, accelerates erosion and down cutting, and is really temporary, because if you're getting sediment buildup in a place that's in a particular location, that's usually a symptom of issues upstream with that location. So some solutions. First, log jams can be very helpful in the stream system. Or recent studies, we think of the classic, I mentioned the riffle pool system in the woods, the babbling brook. Recent research has shown that a lot of Eastern North America, pre-settlement, pre-even Native Americans, was really streams were really an interconnected series of beaver ponds and beaver dams and things like that. And so it's kind of a natural part of the landscape. It doesn't mean they don't cause issues, but if it's not completely blocking the stream channel, if that significantly impeding flow, and if this isn't really threatening infrastructure, if they're just out in the woods and it's a debris jam and it's blocking things up, it actually be really healthy, as we'll see in the next slide here. So this is an example of a pretty big log jam off in the woods. The stream in this picture is flowing from the lower left-hand corner of the stream to the upper right-hand corner of the stream. So lower left-hand corner is upstream and upper right-hand corner is downstream. You can see that because of the channel blockage here, the debris jam, and the sediment buildup behind it, the stream upstream of that actually has better access to the floodplain. So it's actually almost solving the problem of the channel being too down cut and having that downward erosion by raising the bed back up, the bed of the channel back up, and then allows it to spread out over the floodplain. So they can actually be very healthy and help us actually restore stream channel systems. Whereas you can see downstream, we have this typical exposed, bare, 90-degree undercut stream bank where you have a lot of stream bank erosion. So in a case like this may be something where yeah, that's really blocking it, but man, look how healthy that's making the stream channel. However, what you can't see here is that the stream is actually starting to erode around this debris jam to the right, which again might not be a big issue just out in the woods, right? But there is actually a parking lot for a condominium complex about 15 feet to the right of this picture. You don't see that stream is starting to erode towards. So in this case, we did actually recommend removing this particular debris jam. But if this was just out in the middle of the woods, this would be something like just let it go. It's actually doing something it would cost us hundreds of thousands of dollars to do to reconnect that floodplain. So if you have determined that this debris or log jam is detrimental, is threatening infrastructure, either by backing up water and causing flooding or causing the stream to divert and erode, potentially threatening, foundation or a driveway or something like that, or other infrastructure, there are some general guidelines here. Obviously, if you're pulling stuff out of the stream, you want to dispose of it away from the stream. You don't want the next big storm for it to just be back in the stream. Generally, we only want to remove dead vegetation, loose debris. We don't want to remove living, kind of growing vegetation. The exception to that would be if you have trees that are severely leaning out over the stream channel to the point where they're about to fall. It's better to cut them off now, but to leave the stump in place, because that stump can still provide protection, whereas once that falls out, also block the channel, but also can accelerate erosion where it pulls that root wad out. If you're using equipment access from the bank, don't get the tracks or the wheels in the stream channel. That's when you start to need a permit from Army Corps and things like that. Obviously, don't do this is kind of common sense. Do it during low flow. Don't do it in a big storm unless it's really emergency work, in which case you should have a professional out there doing it. And for sediment, like again, you're reaching into the stream channel and make sure you're not spilling that sediment just back out into the floodplain, causing floodplain filling or anything like that. You want to keep that, you're trying to keep that sediment away from the stream channel. Generally, get stuff out and get it away from the stream channel if you are removing anything. Flooding is kind of the final one we're going to talk about. And flooding is really a hard one. It's generally not something that you can do on your property to affect the flooding on your property. So if you have flooding issues, that's usually, again, caused by something upstream that you really don't have any control over. I'd say the exception would be if you have your house or garage or other improvement on your property is located within the floodplain. What you could do is move it out of the floodplain. Like if it's in the floodplain, it's called the floodplain. It's there for a reason. It's obviously much more likely to flood. And so, I mean, the solution to that would be to either move it out of the floodplain. If it's not a residential structure, there are some flood proofing measures you can take. Even commercial structures can do dry flood proofing. But residential structures, really the safest thing would be to move it out of the floodplain. Now, the one thing I will say is that flooding is a complex multi-jurisdictional issue. The fortunate thing is I mentioned the Northeast Ohio Regional Sewer District and their stormwater program that we all pay into. Through that stormwater management program, they are doing regional watershed planning to address some of the more severe flooding and in some cases erosion issues. And so they will be looking at, where can they add storage upstream of areas where it floods, or in cases like this is in right on the line between Middleburg Heights and Brook Park, actually. But they're looking at, actually the suggestion that came out of that was actually even just to raise the bridge and raise the elevation of the road because it's just too low there, given the conditions, because it floods very frequently. And there could be recommendations like that where it's not necessarily something where there's a change made to store more water. It could just be that they are making a change to the elevation, the design of bridges and other infrastructure. So that is something that they're working on. I think that for the Chagrin region, they're close to being done with that. I think it's the last one they were doing, but it's not quite finalized yet. So that's something to look forward to potentially if you do have flooding issues. There could be at least something where they're looking into what it would take to resolve some of those. Finally, I just want to leave you with, this is something I saw, I don't know, years ago, and I like it. So maintenance on alluvial rivers, just think rivers, don't worry about the alluvial term. So, but most rivers operating in our area, I mentioned, are sinuous, so they have the curves, like an S curve. However, an effort to drain lands for agriculture, get water off the landscape as quickly as possible, and sometimes even to make way for development, we straighten those channels or move them, just made more straight lines because it's more convenient for us. That increases its slope, giving it more energy. We talk about moving water equals energy, energy equals erosion. They require intermittent or sometimes constant maintenance to keep those channels straight, but also keep them from falling apart. And the single factor that's led to successful operation of these straightened channels has been to combine the good points of both the sinuous channels and the straight channels. And you combine those symbols and you get the symbol representing the only successful means of maintaining straight channels. So if you straighten a channel on your property or in the process of developing a subdivision or something like that, straight channels don't like to stay straight in this part of the world. They like to move around. And so if you're trying to maintain them in a straight fashion, it's going to be a lot of ongoing maintenance, which typically is going to cost you some money. So with that, I think we'll open it up to questions. Thank you everyone for coming out tonight. I know we went a little over our time here, or right on the hour, but I think we could probably take a couple of questions. I don't know, Kevin, if you're watching those.
Sure, thank you so much. Yeah, we can answer some questions for 5-10 minutes. If we don't get to yours, I do apologize. We do have quite a few. So let's get right into them. Okay, who is responsible for the maintenance of a culvert, a bridge, or a retaining wall?
So it depends. It depends. A bridge. So if that's like on a roadway or a culvert for a public roadway, it would be either the county if it's a county road, a city or township if it's a city or township road, those kind of things. If it's a bridge like just for your driveway or a culvert for your driveway, then that'd be you. Again, so if it's for a public, even a retaining wall, if that's next to a public roadway, or it's there on public property or in the right of way. That would be the public entity's responsibility. If it's on, your property or that retaining wall is to keep the stream from eroding into your house, that would be your responsibility to maintain that.
Okay. I've seen a few restoration projects off of Shaker and Lander. How does the city decide, or where is there, or how do they decide which areas get nominated for these projects?
I'm not familiar with those projects, so I'm not sure. I can tell you that a lot of times there are several entities that are kind of doing that kind of projects, and maybe the mayor is more familiar with those. I mean, it could be Chagrin River Watershed Partners working on a project, and they'd be focused more on, the habitat improvement that could come, or the water quality improvement that come from that. The sewer district could be working on a project, and that could be related to protecting infrastructure, or if it is something to protect a roadway or other public infrastructure. I don't know, Mayor, if you have any other insight on those particular projects.
Let me go ahead and unmute. Okay, you should be able to unmute yourself. There's a button at the top. Looks like a little microphone.
How are we doing now?
There you go.
You okay now?
Yeah.
Okay, good. The two projects on Shaker Boulevard, and there's a third one actually on Lander. The two on Shaker where two homes were purchased and demolished. Those were Northeast Ohio Regional Sewer District projects. The locations were identified by Regional Sewer. The homes were purchased by Regional Sewer. And the purpose was these were homes that had been built essentially in floodplains. And the project is to restore the floodplain, allow the stream to spread out there and slow down the velocity and the volume of the water as it's going downstream. So that's the purpose. Both those properties are being reconveyed back to the city, and we're going to hold those properties as public land in the future, with Regional Sewer having easement rights to go in and make sure that their project is maintained.
Great.
Okay, thank you for the insights, Mayor. Let's move on to the next question. How can homeowners work together to repair a stream that spans several properties?
So, I mean, if you're willing to work together, that's the first step, right? So being willing to work together on it. And it can be, and again, it depends on the issue. If we're talking stream bank erosion, I mean, a good start would be working with the Livesticks here that you can get, pick up next week. If it's more severe, maybe it could be handled by Livesticks, so you try that and it's not working. That's something where you could potentially look together. I would say there is a benefit in piecing together, from the standpoint of if, Chagrin River Watershed Partners or the city or us or we are looking at grant programs, it's a lot more attractive to funders to have, several hundred feet of stream together rather than like 50 foot of stream just on one person's property. So, but I think just be willing to work together as a start, and then helping each other out with the live stake installation and see how that goes. But if you continue to have issues, I mean, part of what we do, we're a local government agency, and I know Kevin does a lot of this too, is come out, do site visits to look at properties and help make recommendations for things that you can do. So
Great. Okay, let's keep moving. We could do a few more. There's a few questions about invasive plant species growing on stream banks or in riparian areas. What do you recommend doing? Should they be removed? Should they be left?
It depends, and that's a tough question. We actually struggle with that a lot ourselves. If you are going to remove it, which depending on what it is, I mean, so a lot of times these could be things. I mean, obviously the Phragmites, lesser celandine starting to be a big issue. Lots of places, a little yellow flower you might see out there. Japanese knotweed, any number of these. And the best way to control these is usually some sort of chemical application, which we don't like to do next to stream channel, but sometimes is important. However, you got to be ready to come in and get something else established there, or it's just going to come back. So a lot of times, if it's right on the stream bank, if you don't have, you're not ready to go with another vegetative solution there, but more planting or really get ahead of that coming back, you'll be fighting it for a while, and you could expose yourself to more erosion on the stream bank if you're taking out that vegetation. So it is really a tough decision. It could depend. It's really a case by case kind of basis. We don't like to see those invasive species, but sometimes they're also the only thing holding the bank together.
Okay. Is it bad to rake leaves onto a floodplain?
I mean, everything's scale. So like if it's the floodplain, you're not putting it right into the stream channel, and you're not, it's pretty wide. If you're not really causing a lot of that, that shouldn't be an issue. If you're dumping from your landscaping business all those leaves in the floodplain, that'd be more of a problem. But and I'd say also it depends. The bigger the stream and the bigger the floodplain, the less of an issue it is.
Okay. Are gabion baskets useful in any cases?
They can be. We don't like to use the what we call the hard armoring, so gabion baskets, and if they're not installed right, they can be undermined and you can have almost more of a problem than you started with. But and they're really expensive. We like to use those as a last resort, or often, if you really need to protect infrastructure. So if the stream's really getting close to a foundation or something like that, you might need to go with a retaining wall or gabion baskets. Generally, if you have the room, it's better to grade the bank back and vegetate it. That'll be a more long-lasting solution. We've seen lots of cases where gabion baskets have been installed incorrectly, and then within like 3 or 4 years, they're sloughing into the stream channel. So, but they can also be installed in combination with some live stakes or even longer, we call them whips, basically. Longer branches that can be installed between the gabions as you're installing those. That can help get some more, you get the benefit of having those branches, those leaves sticking out to provide roughness to the stream channel to slow the water down, and also helping anchor those gabions kind of into the stream bank as well as those whips root. So we can combined factors too, but there are cases where we do recommend those just because you need something that's going to stop eroding right now.
Can homeowners move rocks and gravel deposited inside their creek outside the creek?
Yes.
Yes. Great. Okay. Caught me off guard with that quick answer. Do we have contact info if anyone's looking for like a landscaper or bioengineering firms? You could send me an email. CRWP has plenty of lists of qualified landscapers to help install if you're thinking of purchasing more live stakes. Seeing quite a few questions for that. Okay. Looks like we could do another 2 or 3 questions. Let's see. Here's some live stake questions. Do deer bother the live stakes?
Yes. So that's one thing that we are dealing with. Not just deer. We've had cases on projects where beavers have come and take them all out too. That's less of an issue, I think, but the deer do tend to can be a problem, and I'm sure you are all dealing with the deer browse situation. You're very familiar with that, I'm sure. There are some things you can do, some netting and things you can put around it. When we do a lot of just regular tree plantings, we'll do like wire cages around them. Unfortunately, because these are right on the stream channel, that might not work out as well for just because it's gonna get, when the stream is up and flooding, like it's just gonna be more, it's going to catch it like a sail and potentially rip that off. Like I just don't see that working out. It's going to catch debris as well, additional debris. But netting could work. That's kind of where we are now as far as that. It's just some regular like landscaping netting that you can tie on it, at least until it gets established. Once it's established, deer browsing on it actually might help keep it under control so it doesn't get too big. If you're worried about sometimes people get worried about like, oh, I got a sycamore growing here, is it going to be huge? That deer browse can help keep that under control a little bit, but you really want it to get established first before before you're worried about. We'll consider that a success if the problem you're worried about is your life stakes getting too big. How's that?
Okay, here is a question a little more specific to Pepper Pike. I have a tree that's about to fall into the stream. Am I allowed to cut it down? And I could actually answer that. If there's a tree in danger of falling down in Pepper Pike, there's an ordinance. If it's in danger, if it's like diseased and about ready to die within a riparian buffer zone, you're allowed to remove them. If they're a healthy tree with a diameter of 9 inches, I believe, you cannot. You would need to get a variance for a specific circumstance to do that.
But if it's like what I would say, and if you were going to seek a variance, if it's already leaning significantly, like more than 45 degrees out over the stream channel, in that case, I think that's something where at least our office would recommend a variance in that situation.
Okay, looks like 8:15. So we can do one last question, and then we can go ahead and wrap this up. Okay, I often see daylilies clinging to stream beds. Are they useful for erosion control?
Minimally at best. Minimally at best. They don't have very, not really deep rooted. They will provide some protection, so just the soil's not bare. But it's very minimal. I wouldn't like go out and plant daylilies as a erosion control.
Okay. Well, we're going to go ahead and start to wrap this up.
Yeah. There we go. Yeah, just in wrapping up, thank you very much. I want to thank Jared and Kevin and the Cuyahoga Soil and Water Conservation District and our great friends at the Chagrin River Watership Partner for this presentation. Just as a reminder to everyone, this is recorded. We will have it posted on the city website. It will be located in the Conservation Beautification page of the website. Certainly initially we'll try to get a link up on the front page to get you there a little more easily. We urge you to encourage your friends who may not have been able to attend tonight, who could benefit from this information, to share with them that link. We'll get the city email out regarding it to make sure everyone is aware of it. And just thank you, both of you and your organizations for doing this. Thanks also for a missing partner who is not part of this particular program, but the Regional Sewer District, who really has contributed in an extraordinary fashion, millions of dollars literally, helping to maintain and control those stream assets that fall under their jurisdiction. So thanks to them too, even though they're not part of this program tonight. So thank you, everyone. Do you gentlemen have anything more?
All right, that about wraps it up. Thank you so much to the City of Pepper Pike. Thank you very much to Cuyahoga Soil and Water Conservation District for helping us put this together. And I look forward to meeting some of you next week when we get to hand out all these live stakes. So see some of you very soon. All right, have a nice night, everyone.
It'll be great. Good night, everyone.
Good night.